Call to order a regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees, the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 Board of Directors, the Superior McCaslin Interchange District Board of Directors, and the Superior Urban Renewal Authority Board of Commissioners. Phyllis, if you call the roll.
Okay. Mayor Andrew Muckle.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lisa Skumas.
Here.
Trustees Joe Sorelli.
Here.
Dana D'Souza.
Here.
Elia Gagoris.
Here.
Eric Rosenfeld.
Present.
Deborah Williams.
Here.
Town Manager Scott Randolph.
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry.
Here.
Town Clerk Phyllis Hardy.
Thank you. With that, let's move to item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? Trustee Skumas?
Is it okay? Can we ask questions about one of the things on the consent agenda if it's not, and still have it be on the consent agenda?
What I would say-
Which item is it?
6G.
Sure, it's just preliminary reading, so that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda by Trustee Skumas, second by Trustee Gregoris. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Public comment, a consent agenda and non-agenda items. And if you wouldn't mind, at the mic and name and address, if you wouldn't mind terribly. And Happy New Year to everybody.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Also like to wish the board a Happy New Year as well. May it be prosperous and well. I want to start by introducing myself. My name is Rodney Mitchell. I reside at 427 Blackfoot. My house is a house that borders the north end of Sagamore. I bought up to what's known as the Turnbull property, and on the other side of that is the Huntsman property, where there was the proposed development of the Guardian storage unit. The reason why I'm speaking tonight, and I am going to throw myself open for correction, because perhaps, well, being a citizen, not completely, but I'm seeing that we have an agenda or a motion to consider, to reconsider the annexation agreement and the preliminary development plan for the Guardian Studio to set a new public hearing. And so the reason why I'm speaking to you tonight was to remind you that I did come and speak in opposition about that, and I did submit copies of residents of Sagamore to the town clerk, Ms. Harden, and I read exactly what that was. Now, I don't want to go over old stuff, but I'm ready to resubmit another copy of the residents. And I would like to clarify that I had a day, due to illness and holidays, I had a day to go knock on doors in my neighborhood, and I came up with roughly 40 people who were opposed to the Guardian storage unit, primarily for a number of reasons, which I am going to recap. So I'm open for correction from the mayor.
No, that's fine. Technically, if you wouldn't mind talking about this during item number 10, if you could bear with us for a little bit. We try to do all those things during the specific agenda item.
Okay.
So
would you want me to step away from the microphone and speak later, or
step away from the mic? If that would be okay.
Well, will I be permitted to speak later?
Sure.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
During that section.
All right. And I thank you. I was kind of wondering before I do step away, no, actually, I'll just speak later. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome, George. Happy New Year to you. Missed you at the last meeting.
The board. Thank you very much. George Kuffner, 109 South Fort. I just have a question. When are we getting our committees off of the ground so they're going to correspond with the board, with the back and forth, so citizens will have an opportunity to speak to the committees, since we're having full agendas and the citizens is not having an opportunity to express their opinions.
With the specific
I'm talking about the pro-stat committee,
yeah.
all the committees that you were talking, the town manager was talking about getting off the ground. When are we going to get that off the ground? I haven't been here, so I don't know if we got it off the ground or we haven't got it off the ground.
They're all in existence, and I don't have what their schedule is, and somehow if you have a particular committee that you're interested in, you can either let me know and I can figure out what the calendar is. What we're going to have is these liaisons, which will be the point person that you could chat with, but I don't have those. I don't have that calendar right now, but it should be happening here shortly.
Are we going to have a closer relationship than what we've had in the past with the committees and the board?
That's our hope.
I mean, that's what I want to know. So if people want to speak to the committee and bring forth their opinions, it can be done so, because like I said, look at these agendas. I
Yes,
don't know
that's-
how you have the opportunity to read every one of these when you get your packet on Thursday. You're in charge of all these Superior Metro districts and...
Because it's
1 and 2 and
fascinating
3.
reading, George.
I just want to know.
Because I like little tabs.
Well,
Yeah, so they should be,
okay. let
your
me know.
desires should be happening here shortly, so.
I was asked that question, and
Yeah.
that's why I'm asking the question, because some people want to talk to the committees to get their opinions to you people.
Yeah,
We just had a work session on that, so.
great. Thanks. Any other public comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items? Seeing none. Item number, I think I see none, thanks. Presentations, none. And then item number 6, consent agenda. And on the consent agenda, and once again, there's a variety of questions about these, so we'll talk about that then. But on the consent agenda is approval of the minutes for December 8, 2008, acceptance of the minutes for the Recreation, it's probably Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee and Open Space Advisory Committee, adoption and approval of the resolutions regarding public posting locations for the town, Superior Metropolitan McCaslin, Interchange Metropolitan District, Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, and Superior Urban Renewal Authority. Approval of a liquor license renewal for a Safeway store, preliminary approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 5 of the Superior Municipal Code, preliminary approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 8 of the Superior Municipal Code, preliminary approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 10 of the Superior Municipal Code, preliminary approval of an ordinance consenting to the improvement for, consenting to the, this doesn't seem to be worded correctly as I'm reading this through. Consenting to the, help me here, we're trying to join the special improvement district, I think is what we're doing.
The ordinance is approving town participation in Boulder County's renewable energy program for residential and commercial property.
And that's the preliminary approval that we're trying to have. Adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Billy Downs Academy for Tennis Pro Services, and a motion to approve change order number 1 for irrigation meter and vault replacement with Superior Maintenance for Superior Metropolitan District Number 1. With that, I'll entertain a motion by Trustee Skumat, second by Trustee D'Souza, and discussion. Trustee Skumat.
I had a question about 6G, if I can go there, but if somebody has something on the earlier ones, that would be.
Why don't you just go ahead and start, and we can come
Okay.
back to it. I have.
Okay, for 6G, I had a number of questions, and Mr. Magley of town staff was great about answering a bunch of them, and where I saw things that were cut, but I couldn't find them on the new one, like whether or not parents have authority over their minors. I was freaking out about that one being missing, but he said it's in there, and it did seem to be. One that still remains, though, after looking at a number of these things is on page, I think, let's see, 14 or something of the new one. Top of page 14 of the marked up one, the cut and paste one.
Okay.
That one has something about it being unlawful for more than 3 persons who are not related to occupy any dwelling within the town. I asked about what we count as domestic partners, and they're not considered related. And I thought, well, given the economy and things, people may buy a house together that may not be related people, beyond just domestic partners. I can think of younger people I know who buy a house with a friend and a girlfriend or whatever. And I'm wondering if we can make an exception. And maybe I've misread this, but I'm wondering if we have different rules for whether people occupy it and own it as opposed to occupy but don't own it. Maybe what we're trying to get at is the issue of renters that are willy-nilly and college frat brothers or something that are throwing ketchup on the ceiling. I don't know. Anyway, my question here had to do with, it seems that made me uncomfortable, saying that even if you were owners, if you had joint owners, you couldn't live there together. And especially when we automatically assume that domestic partners apparently by law in the state are not related, therefore it seemed to me to really restrict the flexibility.
Would the town attorney like to?
Sure. You're right. That could create a problem. If domestic partners buy a house together and have then a third party living there, or 2 other parties living there as renters or friends or whoever, it could create a problem. There is another way to go about this. And that's by defining family. And family, it would include people who live together in a single household unit. It's a funny legal term, but basically domestic partners would be included in that definition. Or we could add some sort of definition of domestic partners to this, where we say related. We could add some sort of, I haven't looked at that issue particularly. I have looked at it in the context of defining a family in a different way, and we can sort of skin the cat a different way if that's, because it is rather restrictive. You're correct.
No, this ordinance isn't changing it. This is what's currently in place. And the trigger is the fourth unrelated individual in a household. The fourth. Up to 3 is fine. And whether it's 3 fraternity brothers, or whether it's mom, kids, live-in boyfriend, and a tenant, are still fine. It's the fourth unrelated that gets to the trigger. And it will be also candid. It's an incredibly difficult one to enforce. Proving occupancy.
It's almost
Two
impossible.
sets of.
I stay with my girlfriend, but I don't live there.
Would lose it.
Anecdotal, I'm sorry.
I'm there for the weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very difficult to prove that somebody's residing in a place. It's very difficult to prove who's related and who's not, because you're not allowed to ask people questions that could incriminate themselves. So
We should probably, at least from my opinion, and I don't want to break in here, treat domestic partners and married couples in a similar manner. And so
That would give-
I'd recommend if you could come back with us, these are the options you can pick from. How about when it comes back?
that's a good idea.
Thank you.
The other option is raising the number. I mean, if you don't like 3, you can do 4. I mean, that's an easier solution as far as, you don't have to start defining things, but then that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
So I had a few questions on this, unless,
Are your questions
go
still
ahead.
on this? Because I want to go to I.
yeah, it's on the same one. So I'll go through that. So you said that the parental responsibility of minor children is actually in there. I couldn't find it, but I'll believe you. I don't. You don't need to prove it to me. So if it's there, I'm happy. I just couldn't find it. So
Because otherwise, we have no, well.
right, exactly. Ooh, we go willy
So we
nilly.
don't necessarily need to say it, but yeah.
Yeah.
I asked about parental responsibility, posters, and explosives, and all of them you said were still in there.
Okay. So I'll take
The
your word for
explosives
it.
one freaked me out too.
So my next one is more of a general one. It had to do with the $1,000 limit, which is throughout a variety of these things. Can you tell me what that $1,000 limit?
That's a
I think it's-
jurisdictional limit for our municipal court. And so this code provides that we can write these tickets into our own municipal court. It's not to say that if you shoplift $1,001, you get away scot-free. That just means
it goes someplace
it
else,
goes
right?
to county court. Exactly.
Oh.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I
Yeah.
just want to be sure. I think there's a little bit of on page 7 of the markup on D, it says it is unlawful for person. I think it's just,
For a person.
I think there's just a little maybe typo. Yeah, under D.
Unlawful for a person.
Any is crossed out,
Oh,
but
okay.
something needs to be put in
I
there.
think NY was crossed
Just
out.
NY was crossed out.
Oh, is it just NY?
Yes.
Oh, see, I was not reading
It's-
carefully.
It's very hard to
Word.
read this
Yes,
stuff.
okay. So on page 13, campfires. So does that mean you actually can't have an outdoor barbecue pit in the town of Superior?
Let me see. Yeah, you're right. It seems that that's what that says. That was already on the books, but you're right. You can't
Right, it's
have an
already-
outdoor fire pit in your backyard.
So
I thought it was if it was a
And
certain
and
height
we can't
of
put a
fire.
tent up in our backyard and have the kids camp out?
that was my next one.
That was
which-
another question that was brought up. And again, these are all things that are currently in your code, but you're correct.
So, because my solution is turn
Well-
on the sprinklers.
Well, I think part of the way we can get around tents in the backyard is we're saying that you're not residing or dwelling there. Your kids are playing.
Okay.
If they sleep overnight,
So you think we're fine with that
we're
one?
fine with that. The campfire, though, you probably could not have one of those. A lot of people have those little fire pits.
Yeah.
Right.
No, they're sold all over.
Yeah. So I mean, we can certainly change this.
So,
I think so. I think we need to do that.
yeah, because before
Yeah, I
I think
thought
I
we
called
talked
the
about
fire
this.
department and they had said if it's the flames aren't over, or I think I called the county maybe if the flames aren't over a certain height, things like that. So maybe there's something that
I
we
mean,
could
people
put
use
in.
those all the time. This-
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
can melt glass.
It's too hot.
Okay, I'll check on.
Check on that one.
county has
Okay.
Language for that.
Uh,
Wait, screen.
I think we're talking about a bonfire, that's different.
Yeah, I mean, some sort of, I mean, we want, if somebody wants to sit around the backyard, you know, with a glass
Sure.
of Merlot and sit around your
Your fire pit.
fire pit,
Yeah,
I hope
maybe
that
if
we
it's-
can do that.
Yeah.
somehow.
With its
It's in a
sponsors and
container or something like that, not just on their lawn.
Okay. 28. And does this mean that you can't have a BB gun in your backyard?
Let me get there. Hold on. Where are you now? 28?
28, I think it's under D, and this is the markup, page 28. It is unlawful to something about a pressurized device or something. And it's stuff that's already on the book. It's not something that's been
Right.
changed. It had to do.
I'm just looking here.
powered by compressed air springs.
And I don't know what an anvil is. What is an anvil?
Are we talking Daisy Red Rider?
I know what an anvil is, but how does that?
There
read?
isn't a BB gun.
The word BB gun is not in, I can't see that.
Well,
Well, I just want to make sure. I mean, that I
Oh, we're in
understand
the,
something.
in C. Okay, okay. I'm
In
sorry.
C.
Yeah.
In C.
pellets or
Yeah,
otherwise,
like pellets,
powered by
what-
compressed air springs or otherwise. That could be a BB gun.
That would
Well,
be
that, yeah, that's a
definition.
BB gun. Yeah, it doesn't allow minors to use BB guns.
But adults can?
Yep.
It's rabbits. I mean,
Right. Hang on. Is that your outside voice? I mean, I
Up to
guess.
you all if you want to change that.
I don't know. I mean, this is not something to live and die about. It's never going to be never going to be enforced. But it seems like under adult supervision, it would be
Just
reasonable.
remember, you'll shoot
Adult
your eye
supervision.
out.
yeah.
Under adult supervision.
What was it under like fireworks? Can kids set off fireworks or not? Is that also?
Fireworks
adult?
aren't legal.
Right.
No, I mean the little, not the big ones.
The
I mean those little
sparklers.
ones, the sparklers and stuff. Can kids use those?
I don't know.
Because I would say if they can use those and the BB guns.
We did on New Year's Eve.
I'll have to find the fireworks section.
Yeah, there's lots of kids do.
Well, we don't. Once again,
I'm
I don't
just-
want to
maybe we could
wordsmith
look at-
anything
yeah.
tonight. But if you could just see if that's what this means, and then if there's
That
anything
it,
that we
it definitely
need
is what it means. It means right that a child under the age of 18 can't use, a minor under the age of 18 cannot use a BB gun. So if we want to change that, we certainly can.
to, seems like. I mean, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but you know, somebody that has a BB gun in their backyard that wants to shoot against a target or something, I don't see why that's a problem for the town. So.
Head nod, I agree.
I'm okay with
Yeah,
that.
I'm okay with that.
Depends on the aim, I guess.
Depends where that
The
target
pellet
is
must
set
stay
up.
within inside your residence.
It took me 60 years to get my first Daisy Red Rider.
Exactly. Oh, see, maybe that's what brought it up. I was watching a Chris story on TBS, you know, like all day long.
24 hours.
Okay,
Okay, I'll
that's all I
second
had
that.
on G.
I
Trustee Skomas.
I did want to raise that, I looked back at what the response was on the first one that you brought up, and it says, on the parental responsibility for acts of minors, I heard back that he believes it's covered by state law.
Yes.
I don't know if that's, isn't it good to have it be local as well? So it's easier, isn't it easier for us to enforce if it's in our local code too?
Not necessarily. I mean, you're responsible for acts of minors anyway, so we don't really need to say it. I think it's that was the issue. If you all want it in there, but I mean, you're responsible for your kids' action.
Can you at least confirm that that I believe it is in fact?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. That's it for G. Anybody else? Trustee Williams, you had aye.
I do too.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't see on the contract for how long the contract is for. It didn't mention it's a year, 2 years, it was just open-ended.
Isn't this usually a year contract? It is a year contract.
So it isn't written into the contract, though,
Well,
correct?
there's a termination, I think.
We can terminate these at any time.
I think it's in 3, unless I'm reading it
Just
wrong, it's
get-
terminate the subcontract with the subcontractor if within 3 days of receiving a notice pursuant to number 1. I don't know if that's adequate or not, but
Sorry, it just takes me, I have to get through electronically all of these ordinances before I can get down to I.
Yeah, it's adequate.
yeah, and Trustee Gregoris in the meantime.
Yeah, I had a question about the pros and cons. I mean, I know Billy pretty well. My family has they take tennis lessons every year with him. He's a really good guy. But in the it says that the customer service has faltered within the last year. Are there any specifics that you can share, or is that?
There were a number of an increased number of missed appointments, private tennis lessons, that all of a sudden and some coordination issues. So there was some real concern about renewing a contract. We added some performance criteria within the scope of services, like weekly meetings, to make sure that we could stay on top of it, rather than our only alternative here is to terminate the contract. So we're comfortable. One, the issues have been brought to his attention, their attention, and will be responded to better.
Did you have formal complaints?
Yes.
I know there were several cancellations within the last 30 days because of the weather. So, because our kids had signed up and too much wind, and so.
Ms. Carberry, you have found the answer?
Yes, it's in the scope of services. It shows a winter session and a spring session, and then if you go to subsection 3 of the scope of services, it says the parties may agree that the contractor perform additional tennis programs during the remainder of 2009. So
Okay.
it's those 2 sessions, and then if we need more after that or agree to more, then we can set it up for more. So it will only go through 2009.
Okay. Trustee Skumatz?
And I had also heard some comments about it was felt that he needed more assistance with his CE, and that he was going to hire, and that maybe he should be required to have assistance with a T, you know? And so I asked about that, and I asked, I think it must have gone to Juanita for response. Okay. And she said that he's supposed to have some staff, he's supposed to meet with them weekly, and he's got to put together a training program for these assistants, and he generally has 2 to 5 depending on the session. So, because I had heard from some residents about that sort of an issue as well. So I think this tries at least to cover it, in addition to the performance criteria and such that I can.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else about that? I had a question about 6C. Sorry to go out of order, but it has to do with hosting 3 different locations for Superior Metropolitan. Oh my gosh, the Interchange Metropolitan District. Do we actually do that? And is that a requirement? And that's a state requirement.
Yes.
Where do we post the 3 additional ones in the roundabout?
When the wind doesn't blow it away.
Okay, that's what I thought, but it was hard for me to believe. Okay. Did you have something else?
I just had
Trustee
one.
D'Souza?
Thank you. On 6F, just the part that had been changed from the speeding in school zones, that you no longer have to appear before, have a court appearance.
Yes.
I was just wondering if you could just address why that change.
This was actually being recommended by the prosecutor. It was kind of bells and whistles, or a double penalty, if you will. The fine is double for speeding in a school zone.
Okay.
And we required a court attendance
Okay.
appearance. And the feeling was the double fine is ample. We've gotten their attention, rather than not just, you're going to get fined, but you have to take off work and show up here on a Wednesday morning or afternoon.
Okay. And especially if we have so much trouble with school zone areas, though, I just hope that doesn't, maybe we can kind of track, if there's any way to track whether that's changes the deterrent for people to speed or something like that.
I think we've shared with you.
Or if the tickets go up.
Is the house effect a big part?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see. So.
But we do monitor, like we have code enforcement.
Yeah.
We've been doing traffic enforcement and police performance. And I think we've shared that information with you on occasion, but maybe not every
It'd be
month.
nice to do it again. It's been a while.
Yeah.
And we're also scheduling, to the side, but we're scheduling a meeting with Sheriff Pelley to come make an annual presentation and an annual report to you within the next month or so.
Oh, okay.
That's good. We haven't had that.
And then I had one question just about that, just so I understood how mechanically how this worked. It says that the fine is at least double the fine set by the municipal judge for the same violation outside the school zone. Now, don't we set the fines, or what's the fine schedule?
The judge sets the fines by fine schedule for
So
traffic.
there is a fine
Yes.
schedule that we have that the judge comes up with,
Yes.
and so that can be, there's an exact dollar figure that this
Exactly.
is associated with it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a fine schedule. Trustee Skumatz.
On J, I had a question, and that was that was a pretty big deviation in costs, and I wondered if it was a mapping issue or anything that can be corrected for the future, or whatever, it was the irrigation
Has to do
vault.
with the meter pits.
It's not uncommon in construction or remodeling contracts to dig something up and find an unforeseen condition. We knew that the problem was the size of the vaults and the ability to access them, but once they got uncovered, they found a number of things that needed to be done differently than what we'd specified. We were originally all aghast when we saw the bill, though it was under daily inspection by RG and made sure that the work that we were getting charged for was appropriate. We kind of really scrutinized this one. We've been sitting on it since probably the 1st of December. You might have even heard some complaints about why can't I get paid, but it was because of the roughly 60% markup. But at the end of the day, we came to a final dollar resolution. We were comfortable with it. And I can't tell you much more than that, other than we didn't build the systems, but now that we're responsible for them, we're wanting to make sure that what gets replaced right.
And anecdotally, I was running along Rock Creek Parkway with my dog when one of these vaults was being dug up, and it was things were like everywhere. They
Spaghetti.
didn't. Yeah, I could totally understand this charge because it was like nothing was in the place that was thought it was when it was constructed for the districts.
Thank you.
We can expect that that's going to keep happening.
Yes, I suspect so.
We,
Our bids next time will know better, huh?
You know, is our director of public works going to take those kinds of assumptions into account?
In terms of future budgeting, yes.
Okay. Anything with that one? I had a question, just in general question about 6E, the franchise agreement. So that's always a contentious one that is, everybody talks about it, state, local, national levels. And is there anything in here that, I mean, there was been discussions about if you have a franchise in town for a cable, you need to provide service to the entire town. Is that something that?
That's all in the cable franchise agreement that we already currently have.
So that's in there.
Yes, it's already in there. We're not taking anything out of that agreement with these changes. That agreement still exists. It just no longer needs to be written into the code.
Okay, so that's there, and same thing about government access channels,
Yes,
and
all of
that's
that
not
remains.
going away. And
No, we're not changing anything about the franchise agreement that you currently have. This is intended to address if you have competitors. So someday we might have competitors who
Okay.
want to come in and provide cable.
Trustee Scomas.
And I was confused and wrote a question asking about whether that included internet, whether it includes dish, or what about dish or satellite or
No,
direct
it's
TV
not.
and all that? Okay.
Unfortunately, the federal government has decided to draw these bright lines between different technologies that aren't that different anymore. Cable has its own separate regulation. Wireless direct TV has its own separate regulation, and internet has its own separate regulation.
So this covers only
covers
TV
only-
via, okay,
exactly.
thank you.
And a lot of people are thinking that may change soon, but I don't know. We're pretty mired in a number of regulations.
Unlikely.
Yeah. So.
If anything, it's going to change the other way because people are moving towards state-wide franchises.
Right.
Everyone negotiates franchises for
Which
the
is
state.
what Quest has
All the
already.
municipalities get it. So I think it's.
That takes away a lot of local power, and it's a
Right.
bit controversial.
But remember, franchises are based on the ability to dig in the right of way, and it's really physical infrastructure. So somebody beaming a signal into your house with no impact on the local community really doesn't need to pay a franchise fee.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My last one was, it had to do with 60. It had I think we're approving the thing for Safeway, but just said the motion was for Costco. So I assume it doesn't make any difference. But it's not in this, but it was in just the summary.
It's one of those they take.
Merge?
The last
Yeah, I
one.
can imagine. It's like next,
I
next,
didn't
just
get
didn't
that.
catch
All
that.
right, got
That
them
is
all.
Costco, not safe.
Okie dokie. Any other questions or comments about the consent agenda? We have a motion and a second, and we're spending some money, so Phyllis, if you wouldn't mind.
McCarthy,
Yes.
Rosenthal,
Yes.
Skumatz,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Cirilli,
Yes.
D'Souza,
Yes.
Gregorius.
Yes.
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item number 7, reports, questions, and issues. And maybe we'll start with the town attorney, just to really mix it up. Whoa!
I wish I had something really exciting, but I really don't.
Okay.
We're moving along with your recodification, as you can tell. you'll be getting a few more chapters next time, and we'll keep it going.
Mr. Randall.
A couple of items that we missed during the workshop session. A review of a few items that came out of the digest, and recognizing that we haven't met for 5 weeks. We had 5 digests to review.
Wow.
Some development activities, both good and bad news that we've shared with you, but collectively. We've had 3 business departures that we've shared with you, both our Jamba Juice, Lighthouse Bookstore, and Pots and Paints. Pots and Paints, I don't believe, has locked their door yet, but it's imminent yet this month. In the meantime, we've had 2 new additions. Form and Function, which is the nail and salon over adjacent to next to Starbucks, has opened this past week. And while it isn't open yet, we've received applications for a new business to occupy the old Serrano's, and it's going to be a local pizzeria. Rock Creek Pizza and Dough.
A nice name.
Can I ask a general question about that? So we have I don't know, we haven't formalized a business retention plan, but is there any, I mean, we hate to have, when stores go dark, as they are going dark throughout the country, is there anything that we can do to keep the vibrancy of the Superior marketplace by helping these businesses stay there somehow? I don't know if the manager has any thoughts about that.
Buy locally.
And
No, by Superior.
a lot of the other towns around have been doing that quite a lot.
And there was some
Yeah, it really
reluctance to
doesn't
that.
matter.
There was some reluctance to that, but there are bigger forces at play.
Sure.
I know.
I prepped you when we met with the ownership of the mall back in May. The first words out of their mouth, we didn't have our jackets off, we hadn't taken our seats, but the first words were, we need more rooftops, which is what you're going to hear from them. They will also be asking us for things like additional signage to promote some of the smaller tenants that are in that facility, and I don't think that's something that we would be adverse to considering in the future
In the marketplace?
at the marketplace.
Although they have-
The
although they
ability
have
to
a
advertise some of the smaller ones from the
We approved the
expressway.
sign, and it's got one name on it.
One name on it, yeah.
And they paid $30,000 for it.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds.
Sure.
Those are the kinds of things that you're going to hear.
I guess my only comment, whatever we can, we don't want a business that's going to go out of business to prop them up artificially. But if there's something that we can do from the town to just kind of get them over a hump during this bad economic time, that would be nice to see how we might be able to do that.
The only other one that we've talked about internally was the prospect of promoting the new businesses that open. And by that, just listing them in the monthly newsletter, encouraging our residents to at least experience those new stores as a shot in the arm. Because frequently you won't even know if you didn't drive by that, Fantastic Sam's is gone and now it's a Great Clips, or vice versa. So an opportunity to explain those kinds of things.
Okay.
We'd shared with you a comprehensive report on the wind damage and the amount of damage that the town had sustained. Mr. Nillis is pulling all of those together to see if it gets to rises to the level of an insurance claim, but it doesn't look like it. We also had the one damage of public property damaging private property. I believe it's been restored, taken care of, but you've also seen some email exchanges regarding that. Original town paving, we shared this with you many weeks ago, but obviously construction has been halted as a result of the cold weather. We will be working with the contractor once there's been a prolonged period of time when the temperature exceeds 40 degrees and the asphalt is available, when the contractor will come in and finish. It's an unfortunate situation. I'm embarrassed by it, that we didn't get Second Avenue closed up. Third looks good, Rail looks good, but Second is in a state of
Disrepair.
Yes. And then we shared with you some information regarding the McCaslin interchange. Still have not received the report, but based on the traffic study that the police department had recently done, the accident study that they had recently done, I'm quite confident that we will be installing a new controlled left turn mechanism onto westbound 36. Right now, there's a modest green arrow at various hours, not all hours, and then it's left on green as there's a break in 3 lanes of traffic, which has contributed to, I think our report said, 33 accidents over the course of the last 2 years. By far the highest accident location anywhere within the town. So Alex is looking at it. I expect that we'll be implementing it. It's a very, very low-cost item. It won't be coming back to the board for an approval, but I will share with you when the analysis has been completed and when we can expect to see the improvement. And then there'll be a period of time where there'll be some extraordinary signage, because habit drives too many of us.
I'm sorry, do we control that?
We do.
light? Okay.
and I'm guessing it goes back to the original SMID, but
Yeah.
we control the signals, signalization, pay for the traffic signal maintenance.
Okay.
Those are all the items that I had.
Phyllis?
I don't have anything.
Well, since we're down there, Joe? Eric? Nada. Dana? Oh, Lisa?
That's all right.
I've done this, okay, so I haven't done this for 3 years, so.
That's right. He's
Thank you.
really great.
I'm sort of to the new year, I'm getting it out of my system, so
I don't
done.
put the little
Lisa?
signs up anymore for my neighbors.
That's all right, I saw you in this chair.
Oh, man.
Easy name tag.
Yes, exactly. That would work, wouldn't it? Well, I think I counted, and I think since our last board meeting, I had 8 various meetings of things related to the committees and stuff like that. But I will, anybody who's interested in a couple of them, I'll tell you what I heard. I had a meeting with the Colorado Municipal League, and we had a presentation by 2 very interesting people. I'll happily send the notes to anybody who's interested, and it was, hold on, I'm trying to think of the second. I think it was, this is so embarrassing, Promoter, and I think it was the governor came to talk about what they were doing. So I'm happy to share notes with anybody. It was very interesting, and it was the day that it was announced that we were going to lose our senator to the feds, and there was a lot of machinations outside the room going, and who's he going to put, who's he going to have meetings with today, sort of thing. Let's see. One of the other things I wanted to mention is a really important meeting that I hope the town board members can make it to. Is being held on March 4th, and it's from 6 till 9 p.m. It's the Boulder County Consortium of Cities meeting on the outcomes of the Revenue Stabilization Task Force. And I'm happy to drive anybody who wants a ride, or we can carpool, or whatever, but I have a real goal to try to get as many folks there as we can, because I think it's really important to learn what was found from those meetings, and I think they've got an agenda together that's pretty straightforward, with a lot of chance for questions and understanding. And if anybody wants to have a meeting ahead of time or discuss what came out of that ahead of time, I'd be happy to arrange that with you. I'll bring all my notes from the previous meetings or whatever.
When is that again?
March 4th.
Oh.
It's, I think, a Wednesday from 6 to 9 p.m. Let's see. I have something here about RCAB, and I can't remember what it is, so that's a problem. But anyway, I know, just that there were various announcements, and if there's anything of interest in there, to keep this short, if there's anything about what towns around here are doing, other than that Louisville just passed pay-as-you-throw with composting, I'll let you know. And the Commercial Green Buildings Program, we were expected to have had a meeting today, this morning, 9:30 till 11:30, and needless to say, 3 people showed up, and everybody else, who else could. So it's rescheduled, but we still expect to have something on that in February, and then I believe it's on the upcoming agendas here. The last thing I think I wanted to mention was that the Energy Strategies Task Force of the Boulder Consortium for Cities is interested in figuring out it's worked on a number of issues, including the green building codes for commercial and other things, but it's looking for a next year set of priorities. If anybody has any pet ideas related to energy that they'd really like to see us work on, please let me know. I'll happily forward those ideas. I think those are the highlights.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry. You almost got off. The other thing I wanted to do was I wanted to mention that I looked at the look-ahead, and I don't see any work sessions or anything like that about the library issue, and I would really...
I was going to bring that up.
I would
so I'm
really
glad you
like
brought
to
it
see us
So
add a work
that-
session on that coming up, and have a real discussion about what our priorities are, what we'd like to see. And I forwarded to the board the outcome that we got from now up to 365 citizens' responses to the survey, and I think it would link in with what you've been doing in the weekly digests and such. So if we could get that onto an upcoming work session dedicated solely to that, that would make me very happy. And I don't know how many head nods you need for
No,
that, but I think you've
I'm
got
willing. I'm second. I was
I'm
going to bring that
third.
up.
So.
Okay.
And one of the things people said was ASAP. So
See, I'll just go down the. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say no later than February. I mean, I think we should. Yeah.
That works for me.
I'm thinking the next meeting.
That would be fine with me, too.
I had the Metro Mayor's meeting on Saturday with the governor and Mayor Hickenlooper and a variety of people came by. It was more informative than anything in particular. There was concern about fast tracks and what to do with that. And, I think that we're all aware of the issue. The Metro Mayor's has a task force that's talking about what to do, whether to extend it past 2017 or cut things short or only do one line or the other. And that's task force is in progress right now. And as soon as I hear more from them, which should be within a month, I'll let you know. Also of interest, the variety of the mayors had interest in basically boiled down to revenue stabilization and the concerns that they had, and they were wondering, well, has anybody in the metro area been talking about any of those issues? So I said, so I could probably forward you something. So I think everybody has seen the concerns about competing with neighboring communities and taking one store to go across the borders or playing one against each other in terms of having retail businesses. So that I suspect that might be coming with some more information. Of interest, I guess, Chicago. So there's an urban partnership agreement that we talked about a while in the past that had to do with expediting a managed lane on US 36 through some modifications and some federal dollars. We had been fifth on the list. New York was on there, which that went away, and Chicago was then on the list, and apparently they didn't pass the resolution they needed, and then Secretary of Transportation said that they were now out of the running. So we're now lobbying again for additional dollars. So
Again.
that's
Yay.
$150 million. So it's a pretty big chunk of change. So I wouldn't count on that right now, and I suspect this might be left over to the next administration. But there's always hope.
There's only so many on the list, and if we keep going through all
Yeah, you just, I mean, they're like,
Eventually it's gonna
we're
fall
still on
apart.
the list, but they're talking about areas that are much below us.
I read all that correspondence today, and the first thing that came to my mind was Chicago's the city that just got bumped from the list.
And there's a new administration coming.
This is being punted to the new administration, so
Yeah, so,
don't hold out hope that Chicago's money is going to become available.
right. And then the last one had to do with the library. I ran into Mayor Sisk there at the Metro Mayor's Caucus, and we had some conversation about the library, and he was going to get back with his board about seeing what kind of flexibility they might have, and he seemed to be optimistic about coming back with us as opposed to their line in the sand, but he couldn't commit for the rest of their board. So when I hear more, I will let you know. That's all I had. Lisa.
I've attended 8 meetings now. No, I only attended, I attended the Dr. Cog one. I think the only really interesting thing there is that we're going paperless. So we're going to start having those.
Those are big packets, too.
Yeah, but not enough plug-ins. So I talked for our computers, for our laptops now. That's a big problem. But I did actually get a couple of questions as far as what happened to that program that we had about working to bring Wi-Fi. Did anything ever happen with that, or it just died, or
It went belly up.
nothing?
The company that was selected to serve, and I believe it was the 10 Community Consortium, their first target was to do a couple of target areas. We were not in the target. The company's been unable to come up with the financing.
Okay.
Right.
And
There
that's
I
the
know.
end of it.
The consortium still exists. There's no financial obligation for 2009.
Okay.
Should the economy come back, should the company come back, should another vendor or a different technology, it's something that we'd be interested in continuing to pursue. But I think the board got a brief update of that within the last couple of months. Matt had given you a status report that just said nothing
Nothing.
on the
Okay.
on the near horizon.
Okay. And then there was also a question about for the exit route, for an emergency exit route off
Original Town.
for Original Town. And I didn't check my email today, but was there anything that, was there any emails that were brought up about this? So one of the things is that, and I don't know for sure if the Chin Chin property is supposed to be an second or an alternate emergency route if the bridge is closed off. but that there's vehicles that are parked along that area, so that if it's supposed to be one, it wouldn't be accessible. So I was just wondering if there's some sort of some information on it, because I don't know that information.
And that issue came up with the fires, the evacuation north of Boulder, right? If that were to happen here.
I don't know, our public works director here there's a variety of grading equipment that's on that right now, and I'm sure
Is it supposed
some of
to
it has to
be?
do with Second Avenue, but I don't know if
But-
that's what they're parked there for.
My recollection is that, no, the old rail line is not a roadway. It
Okay.
is not an access point.
Okay.
I don't even believe we own all the way to McCaslin.
Okay.
I believe that
Right.
both the Shin Shin property and the Mary Lang property actually front on McCaslin.
McCaslin, okay.
May be wrong, but I don't believe that even the old railroad right-of-way goes all the way to McCaslin.
So officially, that's not a,
No.
okay, I didn't know. All right,
No more so than somebody driving across the Arsenal property
okay.
or walking across the Arsenal property as a second way to get somewhere.
Okay. So at this point, there is no,
No. But I do know that there's the ability to get up there. I drove it just the other day, and it was one of the things I was looking at, because we have a number of grade changes. The access point to the trailhead, that granted, it's a gravel or a dirt from the existing pavement up to the old rail bed, but you could traverse it today.
okay.
Now, you might be dodging some equipment that's been sitting there. Some of that is associated with the original town paving project. Some of it, I believe, has to do with urban drainage. It's not all our contractors' equipment that's been sitting there.
Okay,
And then we had that illegal dumping that took place a
Oh,
few months
right.
back.
okay. And that was all? Everything else you said?
Trustee Gregoris?
Yeah, I just want to reemphasize to have that meeting about the library. Sometimes, if the work sessions are booked in the next couple of meetings, is it possible for us to meet a little bit earlier? Sometimes we do that with safety and transportation. We meet from 5 to 6. I know that's a lot of hours, but I think it's an issue that's really important to so many citizens, so.
Or we could, we said when we went to the workshops before board meetings, we said when there's an issue or when the agenda starts to back up, we could meet on an off Monday night.
Yeah, I'd be
Okay.
happy with doing that.
Yes.
And I suspect
Just
that,
on the 26th.
I suspect the library is a slightly moving target at the moment, but we definitely should talk about it some more.
Let's go with ideas and things.
And can you help me with what kinds of information you'd like to have to prep for that meeting? Do you just want a status report of current discussions, or do you want to have other alternatives that are available for us to pursue, or?
I think we can
All of
discuss
the
that.
above.
All of the above.
All of the above, yeah.
Doesn't have to
Including
be
what's on the
discussion,
table
open
on us of
discussion
what we
with us.
think we should be doing.
And what's on the table as of today as well.
I think
As
basically
of
the
that
information
date,
that,
whatever date we have the meeting.
Exactly.
the information that you've been providing in our weekly digest has been very informative, and maybe just a recap of some of that. And then,
And then open
for me,
discussion.
the biggest part is, right,
How
just
do we
having a
move
chance
forward?
to discuss among the board what we would like to see happen. So.
Trustee Williams?
So I'll just keep going with that. And I also wanted to say something about the library as well and get it on the agenda either the next time we meet or create a Monday where we can meet.
I'll ask for not the 26th, though. I could be out of town.
And I'll ask for not the first Monday in February.
How about the 20th? Do we have a meeting on the 20th? That's the off day.
That's Martin Luther King, I believe.
It's actually
It's a
Tuesday.
holiday.
I know, that's why I said it, because Monday is the holiday.
Planning Commission meeting.
That would be next Tuesday.
It would.
It's up-
It's up to people. I'm just suggesting.
Well, hopefully we can do it before February.
I could do it if it's next Tuesday.
You can?
Next Tuesday.
The Planning Commission meets the first Tuesday. If they have something to meet.
They do.
No, but that's
No,
not
we're
next
talking
Tuesday.
about the third Tuesday,
The third.
Oh, okay.
January 20th, next Tuesday, a week
Next
from tomorrow.
Is the planning commission.
It
they
is
have the
first and third.
Oh, first and third.
We have the second and fourth, they have the first and
Okay,
third.
first and third.
They have a single application, which is a sign request for Discovery Office Park,
So,
And what time does that start, at 7?
7.
Can we meet at 6?
Sure.
Fine.
Let's do that.
Okay. 6 to 7,
I
9.
don't know if I can make it, but you guys.
For whoever can make it, I don't usually think about my Tuesday, so I can't even necessarily commit to that either, but if you could send an email about that would be
And
great.
I'll poll, the other alternative might be an earlier start on the 26th.
Okay,
You out of
That
town?
would be good,
I'm
too.
out of town. I'm out of the state.
that's really out of time.
It is.
So to recap, we're thinking about January 20th at maybe 5 or 6 p.m.? Or
The town
we
manager
gonna
will send
poll
something out.
on some other date?
Just make sure that the people can commit to that.
We're looking at 20 or 26.
Right.
Okay?
And is the goal to get all of the board members, or is
You're not
the
going to get the whole board members.
We're not going to
That
get
was
it.
just
the
decided.
goal to get as many as possible?
We'll schedule it for the day at which we can get the most.
The most, right.
Alrighty.
Well, then maybe we should have the second in the list as well,
The second, I can't do
of
that.
February.
I can't do that.
We can put all three.
Put them
dates
all
and
in the
see what
hopper,
we
and then
have.
we'll figure out what we can get to.
I
Yeah.
think, I'm sure we can make it work on the 20th or 26th.
Okay.
Let's just do that.
Okay.
26, we should.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, I'm good now.
Okay. With that, let's move to item number 8, which is public hearing and adoption of a resolution modifying Superior Metropolitan District Number 1's rules and regulations increasing original town sewer fees. With that, I'd like to open the public hearing. And Phyllis, you have proof of publication? Thank you. Mr. Randall?
The resolution before you is recommending a modest rate adjustment for SMD1 sewer rates being paid by original town residents. Mr. Nillis is here to answer any questions, but I think the staff report is quite, summarizes the issue quite succinctly. So if there are any questions, again, I'd be glad to answer them.
Questions from the board? So just, it was in the staff report, but just to be clear, the town general revenue will subsidize Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 for the difference compared to what our
The
utility
town's
rates are.
longstanding agreement with original town residents, when they were converted from the City of Louisville Sewer Service to the Town of Superior Sewer Service, was that they would be charged the rate imposed by the City of Louisville, rather than the town's rate. So you'll see that currently they pay $13.92 a month. The rest of the town pays $19.85 per month. The City of Louisville recently imposed a rate increase of 3%, increasing the $13.92 by 42 cents to it's $14.34 per month. The difference in that rate structure is reimbursed by the town to keep SMD1 whole. So our subsidy this current year was about $7,000, almost $7,100. It'll fall to about $6,700 next year. But again, the impact on 102 households that currently pay is 42 cents a month.
And my other question, just mechanically, do we have to, every time that they change the rate, do we have to have a public hearing, or is there a way that we can structure this that it just tracks, or we actually have to do this? All
Yeah, we have to have a public hearing every time, unfortunately.
right. Other board questions or comments? Public comment? Seeing none, close the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion by Trustee Skomatz.
I'd like to move Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 Resolution Number SMD 1-2, Series 2009, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 setting new service rates and amending the district's rules and regulations by adoption of a new Appendix A to the rules and regulations.
Okay, motion by Trustee Skomatz, second by Trustee Gagouras. Discussion regarding this? All in favor? Unanimous. That motion carries. Thank you very much. Item number 9, adoption of 2 resolutions amending an agreement with Richmond Homes and an intergovernmental agreement with the Boulder Valley School District regarding the school sites. And just to remind you that Phyllis has passed out you've passed out. I was just reminding people that there's 2 new resolutions to reference. So, Mr. Randall.
A little bit of history. The board is well aware that this has been an issue or a project staff has been working on for well over a year. It dates back. The issue, though, dates back to 1995 when the town entered into an agreement with and for Rock Creek Ranch planned unit development. That agreement was between the town and Richmond Homes. One of the elements of that agreement indicated the number of school sites, the size, and the location of each of those sites that were to be dedicated to the town and ultimately dedicated or turned over to Boulder Valley School District for the construction of local schools. You've got the history, which says that the agreement originally envisioned 46 acres for 3 different school sites, plus a cash donation for a high school. 2 of the schools have been built. One of the schools that was built was a K through 8, when it was originally envisioned that it might be an elementary and a middle school. The decision to build El Dorado K-8 has left the adjacent 11 acres as an undecided or undetermined land use. The agreement that we have with both Richmond and with the Boulder Valley School District, the agreement with the school district expires in 2014, says that they can use the property or demand the property up until that time, recognizing that they have been very clear that they're not going to be building any additional schools in Superior. We approached both the parties and tried to facilitate the agreement that's before you tonight. In summary, again, you have 2 resolutions, an agreement with Richmond and an intergovernmental agreement with Boulder Valley Schools. In summary, again, the agreement with Richmond says that they would get title to the 11 acres adjacent to El Dorado K-8. In exchange for that title, they will pay the town a cash sum of $350,000. They'll also donate 15 acres of commercially zoned property at the northeast corner of Colton and McCaslin to the town. That agreement, as both agreements are predicated upon Richmond submitting a development plan consistent with a conceptual plan that you saw almost a year ago. That residential development plan would call for no more than 38 single-family residential lots to be built on that 11 acres. Richmond is obligated to submit those plans within the next 90 days, and the town is obligated to review, not to approve, but to review and bring to closure the review and approval of those plans within a 180-day period after their submittal. If those dates were to carry out, they would be submitting in early March, and the town would be obligated to conclude its review of those plans by mid-September. Assuming that gets completed, then this land transfer would be consummated. It would not get consummated in advance. The second agreement is between the town and Boulder Valley School District. Boulder Valley School District, which I said has interest or tenant rights within that for that 11 acres through 2014, will relinquish those rights in exchange for a cash payment of $350,000, which is coincidentally the exact amount that Richmond is going to be paying us, as well as a modest forgiveness of an existing debt that Boulder Valley owes us. That was money that the town fronted for the improvement of parking lot improvements at El Dorado K-8 4 years ago. They've made 2 of 4 installments. We would agree to waive the last 2 installments of that debt. And again, that's all contingent. So these 2 agreements are contingent upon each other. The agreement, as we've been told by Boulder Valley staff, will be going before the school board on their consent agenda tomorrow night for their ratification as well. Be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Trustee Williams.
Yes. So I kind of just wanted to sum up one thing that I want to make sure I understand. It is basically costing the town $42,200 for the 15-acre parcel. Is that correct? Can I put it that way?
There's another economic condition, very modest one, that says that the town would reimburse Richmond up to $20,000 for the extension of off-site utilities to service the 11-acre parcel. But adding those 2 together, yes, the town would be getting ownership of 15 acres of commercially zoned and developable property at the corner of McCaslin and Colton in exchange for roughly $60,000.
Okay. Then I have one more question, which is
And I'll say
quite
that
a bargain.
as straight a face as I possibly can.
That's quite a bargain, I have to say. But then I also wanted to find out, as far as the agreement with Richmond on this 90-day where they need to submit their plans for development of that property, the 11-acre. If they do not submit it, does that mean this is all null and void?
Yes.
Okay. What kind of incentive is there, or no incentive, one way or the other? I mean, why is this in there? Can you give me an idea of why?
Nobody's going to make the payments without knowing that what they want to do can get done. Right. So that was why we tried to tie their hands on how quickly they could get a plan submitted, and likewise we put in a reasonable period of time under which the town would go through its normal review process of such a plan. And that's where the subsequent 180 days came in. So if they don't submit, it's null and void. If we don't approve, it's null and void.
That's just what I wanted to hear. Okay.
Rest
So if we
assured, they'll
don't,
submit it.
if we don't approve their development, the whole thing is null and void?
Correct.
Okay.
And no money and no title changes hands until that period is passed. And actually, we've built it out, because there's also an appeal process and the like, of an additional 75 days after the 90 and after the 180. So we don't anticipate an actual transaction happening until approximately October 15th.
But there's several ways for it to fail.
Yes.
Sorry to say it that way, but I just wanted to make that clear.
Trustee Skumatz?
And I guess just to follow on that, so it wasn't that they had, yeah, it's too bad that they had the option to submit as opposed to being required to submit. Okay. Hoping goes through.
But it is their intention to build on it.
Very much so. And again, the board and the planning commission have seen the conceptual plan.
And I remember seeing it, I can't remember what the
seeing it.
answer to the question of, is that density similar to the surrounding neighborhood density is?
That's how we came up with the number of units, that the average lot size and the type of home that could be built on those lots would be comparable to those immediately adjacent.
Thanks.
Torrey's Peak and Opal.
Trustee Rosenfeld?
So just a quick question. I know this is something that we've been pursuing for a while. Given the current economic conditions, do we still think that this is a deal worth pursuing? Simply because if the reason why we're doing this now is because we want it sooner than 2014, right? Well, we're trying to get that piece of property on the corner versus the other property. And so I just wanted to make sure that we're still comfortable that this is property worth pursuing given the current economic conditions. Are we going to be able to quickly develop within the same time frame the property that we're trying to get? Yeah,
The 15-acre commercial?
on the corner that we're getting.
The 11-acre.
Whatever, the property we're getting out of this.
Colton
deal.
McCaslin.
Colton McCaslin, whatever the number is.
It has been zoned commercial.
It's already zoned commercial.
Has been since the
Right.
creation of Rock Creek
Right.
PUD. We know that while it's been maintained under the ownership of Richmond, they have fought the idea of commercial development there. They've not aggressively marketed it as commercial property, have presented various proposals for alternative residential developments at that location, something that the town has held steadfastly opposed to. As the owner of the property, I have confidence, comfort that we have a greater opportunity to see the kind of a commercial development. And it brings a whole nother, as the landowner, it brings even more control over what ultimately might, can, and should happen there than even your traditional plan review and zoning approvals.
So it's still more valuable to have this property with this trade
Right.
than just waiting till get it to 2014 to get the other property.
I should think for pipeline reasons, if nothing else.
And I guess my other thought about this is that, we're doing something good for the school district. We've brought them along, perhaps kicking and screaming. But at the end of the day, this is an
They're getting a
ability
big chunk
for
of
us
change.
to actually get
Yeah.
them some money that otherwise
Right.
they would just lose in a few years. And so,
Yeah.
while we're not here to work for the school district, I think it's in their best interest, so.
Yeah. So, and so I think just for residents watching more than attending, I just wanted to kind of raise some of those issues because obviously there's some concern from residents who live right near the property that Richmond is getting about the quality of Richmond development, which is not high, or certainly wasn't in Rock Creek in a lot of areas. And of course, the short-term, impacts if Richmond starts building next year or whatever. So I just thought it would be a good idea to bring out the fact that there are a bunch of good positives coming out of this that, for the town overall, probably outweigh those impacts immediately.
Great, thank you. Any public comment about this particular issue? Anything else from the board? Seeing none, Trustee Skumatz?
May I read a motion?
Read away.
I'd like to make a motion, Town of Superior Resolution Number R-3, Series 2009, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a First Amendment to Agreement 2 agreement with Richmond American Homes regarding dedication of school sites in the Rock Creek Branch PUD.
Motion by trustee Skumat, second by trustee D'Souza. Discussion about this? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Trustee Skumat.
To make a motion, Town of Superior Resolution Number R-4, Series 2009, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a First Amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with Boulder Valley School District RE-2 regarding school sites and cash in lieu in the Superior Rock Creek Ranch PUD.
Motion by trustee Skumat, second by trustee D'Souza. Discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. So it'll be interesting to see when that comes forward. And Mr. Randall, you know, if it comes to fruition, thank you for all your hard work on this. It's sometimes difficult to deal with different entities. The school district is one of those entities. So, but thank you very much, and thank you to the school district if it comes forward. With that, item number 10, motion to reconsider the annexation agreement and the preliminary PD-ZDP for guardian storage and set a new public hearing. Mr. Randall?
This item originates as a result of requests of individual board members. As you will recall, the board did conduct a public hearing at its last meeting, at which time it was presented with 2 resolutions and 2 ordinances. The first resolution and the first ordinance were approved. The second resolution was defeated. That resolution would have been consideration of the annexation agreement. All the votes were 4-3, 4-3, and then 3-4. So we've prepared for you the process that if a member of the board that voted against the annexation agreement is interested in reconsidering the annexation agreement, one of those 4 members that voted no has to be the one to make the first motion. Anybody can second the motion. If a majority of the board is willing to reconsider, then it's up for reconsideration. The only other nuance with this one is we're taking a very conservative approach, but we're recommending that no further discussion or action take place on this until we can post and publish a 30-day public notice so that the board can take additional testimony and that everybody that's involved, the applicant, adjoining property owners, everybody else, can have the same kind of notice they would have had for the first meetings before the Plan Commission and the board. So we're recommending that no further action on this after the reconsideration, assuming it's approved, that no further action be taken until the second meeting in February.
Trustee Skumat.
I'd like to make this motion, being one of the people that voted against this, that we reconsider this development per the stipulations that were discussed due to the changed circumstances.
Okay, so we have a motion. I'll entertain a second, but then we will have public comment and then discussion among the board. So second by trustee Gregorus. So what is the...
Can we ask you questions?
Of course.
Okay.
This would be the time. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Trustee Rosenfeld.
Thank you. So I had 1 or 2 questions. In terms of the process, would this have to go back through the Planning Commission?
No.
Because there's no change to any of the to the proposal itself. It's just a change to, or an addition of this. What did we call it?
Well, it would be an amendment to the annexation agreement.
Or whatever. Excuse me?
It would be an amendment to the annexation agreement.
Which was approved, right? Or, no, I'm sorry, it didn't all go through, right?
Correct, it did not go through.
So it would be an amendment to the annexation agreement, but it doesn't need to go back to the Planning Commission?
It does not. The board has the right to change any and all of those. The Planning Commission is only advisory on all the matters that come before it and are recommended to the board.
Okay. All right, that was it.
Okay. Trustee Gregorus.
Will we have public comment? Because
Yep.
I think there's some people here that...
We absolutely will. So the upside, so what would cause one to reconsider this if it was to come forward? What's the upside?
As I indicated in the staff report, there were 2, at least, significantly expressed concerns by the board when they were considering the whole, all of the applications and the resolutions and ordinances before you 5 weeks ago. The 2 biggest ones, at least that we heard, one had to do with the idea of the potential piecemeal development of that corridor and how other properties could be used. And we don't have a lot to add to that. I think we had a lot of public discussion about it that night. But the other one was the town has envisioned this property to be a retail sales tax generating corridor. And as a result, one of the downsides of the proposal that was presented to you 5 weeks ago was it's only going to get paid property tax. And the economic return to the town as an annexation, you've got a lot of control and authority and discretion in this regard, wasn't generating enough money for the town. So as a result of the inquiries that were made of me by the board, I approached the developer and said, we need to try to sweeten the deal. And we came up with a negotiated, and it was an extensive negotiation, and I would be glad to summarize it for you. We had come to the conclusion that something that replicated a sales tax generating facility might be more palatable to the board. So as I've summarized in the report, we've assumed, and the developer has agreed to amend the annexation agreement so that we would receive 3%, which is comparable to our local sales tax rate, on gross leasing receipts up to their first $1 million a year, or $30,000 a year, for the first 10 years of occupancy. If they chose to make the payment in advance, lump sum, we made a calculation, and again, as a result of extensive negotiations, discounted by a rate of 5% to come up with a net present value. Now, if they elect to go with 10 annual payments, we'll do an annual audit, find out what their lease receipts were, and they'll pay us the 3% on the first $1 million. If they want to go ahead and do the lump sum, it's $202,000 and change. And assuming that the board is interested in reconsidering this, the annexation agreement that you saw 5 weeks ago would be amended to incorporate this kind of language, subjected to a public hearing in 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and further consideration and a revote.
Okay. Thank you. Any more board questions before we have Trustee D'Souza?
So one of the other concerns that I had, and this was also brought up by the Planning Commission as well, is that we didn't have maybe an overall view of what we wanted for those properties there. And if this does come forward again, would it be possible to get something from staff that, not to necessarily plan the whole area, but just give us an idea of if this were to be approved, what other uses would there be for some of those properties? Because we had some concern of the property to the south and whether or not it would be viable in the future. And not that it's necessarily Guardian Storage's obligation to find some development, but just I'd like to know for myself if there would be any possible types of businesses or that could be viable in that area. So if this came forward, that would be one.
I asked for that specifically one time, and I actually have not seen anything on that. As far as what's ever come forward, what was planning on any one of these properties, if there was anything in the past. I know we kind of touched on it, but I didn't actually see anything in like a plan where I love looking at, let's see here, where is it? The map here.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'd like to see is kind of maybe a 3D idea of what can be done with these properties, what was thought about being done with these properties, so that we can see a overall plan.
Well, first, some of you that have a longer institutional memory than I will recall that there were previous development plans submitted for this property. You heard testimony to that fact by those property owners, and those plans had been rejected. I think we shared as much as we had of those plans with you to say, and don't hold me to any of these numbers because I wasn't here, so I don't know. 2,000 homes, 1,200 homes, here was the development plan of Corporation X, here was the development proposal from property owner Y. So that's some of the history that was out there. But the board was very clear in its comprehensive plan review that this was going to be non-residential. In fact, the comp plan says office. The board has given guidance to us for the last 2 years that anything non-residential would be a well-considered proposal. Within my 2 years, you've seen 2 development proposals, conceptual. The first one was Guardian. You've also seen the proposal for the 1-acre Love parcel. Mm-hmm. Anything that we come back with is subjective and hypothetical. Be glad to go through some sort of an exercise to come up with something, but recognize that it's not based on market at all. It would just be, here's a nonprofit use, here's a residential use, here's a long, skinny commercial use, and what else might happen on some of the other surrounding properties to the west and to the north. I'm sorry.
Well,
That would be okay. That's kind of what I'm looking at, just some sort of a general idea of what we would or would not exclude,
and
perhaps. A very general sense of, because that property to the south has certain, I guess, constraints, is it still viable afterwards for development? So
Well, I hoped that we had brought clarity to that concern. That property, as unincorporated Boulder County, has no constraints.
Okay.
Any constraints that might exist on that property will be determined by the board if and when that property comes forward. But it is not encumbered in any way, shape, or form in its current condition.
so that actually puts the town board to make an unprecedented concession to forego the 300-foot buffer. Or it requires the town board to accept a residential neighborhood with no buffer between different land uses. So it puts it on the town board to make that decision, correct?
No.
Yes, it does.
No. The
My understanding-
faulty
my
assumption
understanding
is that there's a restriction that exists, and there is no such a restriction.
And Trustee Gregorus, I haven't forgotten you, but
I think my answer is kind of being answered. I'm listening around, so we'll see if I have.
so if the town is, I mean, this is an overstatement, but the town should not put, say, a commercial property next to residential. But could a property owner who wants to build residential by themselves desire to put a property of residential next to commercial? That would be their right.
Yes.
It's the other way around. That's the concern.
So then it puts the Turnbulls in a situation where their best option is residential.
You know,
It does, it does, it
I want
limits.
to cut you off from getting too far into the details on it, because, I mean, this is all discussion that should occur, but in my opinion, should occur in the public hearing, with the public hearing it and having a chance to
Yeah, I
comment
agree.
on it. So I don't want to discourage the discussion from happening, just I don't know that
But just
now
to
is
be,
the right time.
yeah, but just in terms of I'm trying to just be clear, so the restriction is actually on it's not really a restriction, this is an overstatement, but it would be the desire of a property owner. If they wanted to put residential next to a commercial property, it would be on their own, it's not for the board. Trustee Gregorus.
Well, I was just going to, it's not a question necessarily, but because the piecemeal approach to this entire area is clearly controversial to residents there, I think we could need a little bit more information when we do have this discussion from you about the potential future development of other parcels. It would be helpful to have some idea. I mean,
Like for those of us who are more visual, some kind of 3D map layout. It's kind of what I've been looking
I'm
for.
not,
I'm sorry, maybe I'm the only one that feels that way.
I don't necessarily need a 3D map. I think we should have this discussion to see what are the possibilities beyond the Guardian and the 1 acre property, so.
Trustee Skumats.
My only request is that when you do that you put feet markers next to it also, because I couldn't tell on that last one. I was trying to measure, okay, it's maybe an acre long, how big is that, whatever, so put some feet markers on the map. That's it.
I guess I'd also recommend, whatever, not that there's anything specific, but what the Love property was not anticipated, but what they've suggested that it might be interested in.
It's an aside, but Love is scheduled for a second conceptual plan review either at the next meeting or the first meeting in February, so before this one will be heard.
Okay.
Not that there's any interrelationships, but it's just a matter that's the applicant's request.
Trustee D'Souza.
So if we were to approve this tonight, would there be a chance for maybe the board to have a discussion about maybe what sort of a plan we might envision for those properties before this is brought before the board again? I mean, could we have a workshop discussion if we've approved this? Could we still have a workshop discussion about what we want to do with those properties?
Like an executive session?
No, not an executive
Open meeting,
session, just
open
an open meeting, because it's one of those things that we haven't talked about. It's kind of like a comp plan idea, but it's on the comp plan since the offices.
It's all one big place.
Right. But, I don't know if we've just had a chance as a board to actually talk about it, and because that has been brought up by the Planning Commission. Would there be anything that excludes us from doing that?
Well, part of the problem is, I mean, you can't, it shouldn't be seen as you bypassing the public hearing procedure, but, in this specific application, by trying to have a more general comp plan amendment discussion. So, because what's going to happen, you have a general comp plan amendment discussion for this area, you're going to end up talking about this property. And that's not really fair to the applicant who has a pending application. So I would recommend that you do this first. And, I understand what you're saying, to try to come up with a plan for the whole area, but it's very difficult to separate out. And since the applicant has a pending application, the applicant deserves that to be discussed at a public hearing about their application.
But can we discuss then at the public hearing the other areas?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure. Trustee Rosenfeld.
So just a quick question or two about the agreement that's been negotiated. So why the 10-year lifespan of this agreement?
I squeezed as much as I could get. And I go back to the original economic analysis, which showed that this property was going to generate municipal revenues of roughly $13,000 a year. There was also a concern about creating a competitive market disadvantage. So we built in some safeguards from their perspective, if you will. A limited term, a credit for any sales tax that they might generate against the $30,000 maximum annual contribution that they would provide, and then some flexibility in whether it was a lump sum.
Okay.
But it was all on the table, and from my perspective, I got the best I could. And when we wrapped it up Thursday noonish, as the agenda was going, and using that as a pressure, I think I got as much as I was going to get.
Now, are there, in a municipality that can levy taxes, are there normally taxes levied against a rental facility like this?
Leases are not taxable.
Not leases. Okay, leases are not taxable. Okay. So even
for
if they were
sales
to
or
become,
use. So it was the basis for our calculation.
Right. Understood, but after 10 years, this runs out. So the question is, could we levy a separate tax if we were to go to home rule in 5 years, and which would be not, which would essentially be on top of their monthly payments or whatever.
Not as the law exists today.
Okay.
State statute would change in that period of time, possibly.
Right.
So forgive me if I'm wrong, though. I thought there was a municipality in Colorado that taxed a storage unit, but maybe I'm wrong.
I can look into it. I'm not sure. None of my clients do, but I can certainly look.
I mean, and I certainly might recollect this incorrectly. So, would love to hear any public comment about this. Thank you for bearing with us.
And waiting around.
Thank you very much for permitting me this opportunity to speak before you. Happy New Year again. Rodney Mitchell. I reside at 427 Blackfoot here in Superior. That's on the northern boundary of Sagamore. So when there was a conversation about notifying everybody 500 yards, I butt up to the Turnbull property. And I'm not sure exactly how things work, but when I first heard about this was yesterday, so I felt like, where's my 30-day notice? You let me down. But I understand you're voting on to have a decision whether there will be 30-day notice in a public hearing. So now that that's clear for me, I do want to urge the board to not approve this, and for the following reasons. One would be is I think the opportunity I had to speak to you before 5 weeks ago, I thought we were going in a direction of coming up with a more comprehensive plan for all the properties north of Sagamore, so that all the property owners could have a fair view of what they could do or not do with their property, and I think all the residents in Sagamore would have a rough idea of what's going on. I do want to go on record and say that I do favor and I do support the idea of Guardian Storage Unit building their storage unit. As of today, right now, I would support it if it was up against next to the CDOT property. I think that's where it needs to be. My objection, and I believe the objection is shared by the roughly 40 people who have either emailed or sent in this form of opposition, was that our concern was that the Turnbull property would be relegated to staying as it is in perpetuity, and with all due respect to the Turnbulls, but in my humble opinion, what it looks like to me is it is I made my note here, it would be a perpetual blighted property, and I don't mean that in a pejorative sense, but walk a mile in the shoes of the Turnbulls or anybody looking at buying the Turnbull property, and you're just going to basically go, I can only do residential, but who in their right mind would want to do a residential development on the Turnbull property? You're going to have the Guardian storage unit to the north, and you're going to have Sagamore on the left. Somebody absurdly had put, well, we could do high-end residential, mansions, and I'm going, that is just absurd. That's the most polite way I could put it. No one would want to put a luxury home next to a storage unit. The only residential it's going to be wanting to go next there would be something like multiple family or condos or something like that. I'd be okay with that, but I just don't see it happening. I see, in my humble opinion, I'm not the smartest guy, but I think that if Guardian goes in on the Huntsman property, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see the Turnbull property stay the way it is in perpetuity, and that I object to, and I believe that many of my fellow Sagamore residents see that way and would object to that. So the other thing that comes up is that the other property owners to the north of Sagamore have already gone on record as opposing the Guardian storage unit. I specifically point to Lori Kelly and Joe Martinez, who would be directly to the west of the Huntsman property. The Turnbulls are certainly against it, and I believe Everett Way, who owns the other property, would be opposed to it as well. Your own planning, when somebody on the planning, Rochelle Rittmaster, had spoken in opposition of this and advocated a comprehensive plan for all of the property. So what I'm fearful is that the Turnbull's options is trying to do some kind of residential, or they're relegated to becoming a 300-foot buffer. And I heard our Mr. Randall speaking about that, they would have the option of doing residential, but I don't think anybody would want to come along and do residential. So that's my interpretation of it, and I think I would be more than happy to resubmit the copies of roughly 35, nearly 40 people in Sagamore. Of course, if you do decide to go forward with this, then you'll burden me with knocking on the doors of all 180 homes, and I'll be back, and I will be, but I do want to recommend comprehensive planning first. Let all the property owners know, including the residents, that this is the direction we want to go in. And one further thing, considering that many people have a sensitivity to carbon footprints and global warming and all the rest of that stuff, and I know there's a strong reservation or resistance to more rooftops, was the pejorative term I heard earlier tonight, I would encourage that we look at the possibility of trying to look at more residential, because we have a hub of access to Highway 36. We got a bus stop there, and it's either that or else the people will just drive in from Westminster, continuing to clog Highway 36. So forgive me for going over my time. I thank you, but I do want to encourage you not to approve this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good evening, and thank you. My name is Joe Martinez. I am one of the property owners to the west of the proposed development. I think you might recall what I had said before in the email that I had sent that apparently a lot of you have not received. But my big concern here is the piecemeal thing, and I guess my first question would be, what do you folks want? What do you want to be there? Where's the town going to go? At the last meeting, I heard one of the town board members say, well, nothing seems to be working, so let's go with this and see what happens. Well, that to me seems to be reactionary. I'd like to see some leadership and see somebody with a vision. I heard Ms. Williams and Mr. Gregorius and D'Souza kind of mentioned some visionary things this evening, but where's the vision? I just, to be reactionary to something, well, we haven't got, nothing else seems to have worked, so let's just start someplace and let's go with this. And I don't think that's a good idea. I think you should, the board should establish some vision or get some staff, people or somebody to get something going. I mean, just off the top of my head, where city offices going to be in the future? That'd be a great place for a Superior Civic Center or something of that nature. With a gymnasium and a rec center where you don't have to, kiss Louisville's rear end, just something like that. I mean, just where's the vision? And as far as revenue being generated, I think there are means that more revenue can be generated with means of besides the storage facility, commercial. And I understand there is a pending application and other properties should not be discussed at this time, but I think you may be wrong in saying that, because I think the other properties and the piecemeal is the sticking point, and is one of the sticking points in whether or not this is approved or not. And I guess I'm not blackmailing anybody or not, but if we go through with this and I don't see any potential development for my property, then I'm going to go ahead and go with my own plans. And right now I am zoned agricultural. And Thursday night at the stock show, I am putting a deposit on 50 head of swine. And I'll go through with it. And on the 24th, I have to come through with my deposit on the 24th of February. So one of the things that can go back there, you were asking what else can go back there if this storage facility is built. One of these things that can go back there is a hog farm. And I mentioned in my first letter, if the town board doesn't come up with something where it will be beneficial to everyone, then other decisions will be made and they might not be beneficial to anyone. And I don't know. I mean, I have to be able to do something with my property. And nobody's going to want to build behind a storage facility. Nobody. And I guess what I'm asking is, as I said, where's the vision, or what do you want to do? I'm assuming this town has a director of economic development. And if he does, he should have some plans. And if he doesn't have any plans, then he should have another job. And I guess that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a director of economic development?
That's what I thought.
Right. I didn't think we had anybody other than you.
Good evening. My name is Everett Way. I live at 8654 Hollyoak Lane in Lafayette, Colorado. I own the 12 acres that pretty much surrounds the CDOT site. I'm also here to speak in opposition for you allowing the Guardian project to move along. It seems like nothing has really changed, probably since you had your December meeting, which is a little more than maybe 30 days ago. They have approached me about buying my property, or part of my property, the 4 acres that actually touches the CDOT property. What's difficult for me is that at that point I have no access to the remaining 8 acres of my property. What we had discussed was the two things that Mr. Randall had brought up, but in addition, that some of you have brought up, and also some of the citizens, was that this needs to be master planned. And part of what's difficult is that to put the Guardian in the middle almost of this 28 acres, it makes the whole thing so difficult to plan. And I have to argue with everyone, because I really am under the impression, although years ago I had a multifamily project accepted on my site And then a subsequent comprehensive plan said no residential, and that was some of the discussion from the most recent boards. And then tonight, we're talking about the possibility that Turnbulls could come in with a residential, so they wouldn't be burdened with that 300-foot buffer, which I may be misunderstanding the rules, but I do get the impression that that's something that it's negotiable by a PUD. But anyway, if they cannot come in with a residential, then if you strictly interpreted the 300-foot rule, half their property could not be developed. Anyway, in my meeting with the Cohens, I had gotten back to their realtors before the holidays, and I said, I will entertain this offer, but I need an opportunity, which I'm still willing to do, but I need some time to master plan this whole community at my expense, because I need to be able to figure out how to serve the remaining 8 acres that they wouldn't buy, because I have basically no frontage. And I have in mind something that I think you will all like, but I would like to see if we could set up some kind of a work session that I could present the plan and my ideas to you. I know it sounds, that's a little bit in the direction that you sounded like you were going, but at the same time, it sounds like your time is becoming limited, and work sessions kind of a hot topic at this point. But I really feel that I have something that will have very little impact on the schools, very little traffic, people will spend money, it'll create employment. I think it will be very nice. I think as far as the Guardian is concerned, anyone in the self-storage business wants to be just there, close to a high-exposure road, which so it does, I think most people recognize that it makes sense for them to be on the northern edge of the property next to the CDOT site. Anyway, I would like the opportunity, but I need a little bit of time to create my plan and develop it and bring it to you. And I would, if you could authorize the city manager to speak to me about setting up a work session, I'd really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. Any more public comment regarding this issue? I have a motion and a second. Any further comment?
I just had a question on this as far as the timing that this was brought forward. And it said it had to, for this to be brought forward again, it had to follow the last meeting that it was brought up at? Is that correct?
Yes.
So they couldn't put this off another month or something like that before they...
The board can't. For the board to reconsider
Right.
its previous action, it has to take place at the following meeting.
Okay.
And it can only be introduced again by somebody that voted in the majority.
Right. And now, if for the board to reconsider, but can Guardian bring this forward on their own some other time?
By
course.
submitting a whole new application.
And starting from scratch, correct.
They'd have to start from scratch, and it'd be
Yeah.
expensive. There'd be all the. I mean, it would be very time consuming. Is that?
If I remember correctly, the first time you saw the conceptual was either last January
So
or
we'd have
February.
to go through all of those again. Okay, I see. Okay.
They don't have to go through the concept plan review.
No, they don't have to, but
But it's still time.
submitting of new applications and...
Right. If we approve this, who sets the timeline of February 23rd? Is that us? Is that driven by state statute or
Land,
or our
land code
land use
says
code?
that public hearings regarding land use applications require a minimum of 30 and a maximum of 60-day public notice.
Okay. So
We
It's in
fix.
the paper.
So it's a 30-day window, sometime between February and March, where this could be reconsidered.
Correct. And we did study, the prospect, but we didn't want to open the process to challenge. So we looked at, well, if we don't reopen the public hearing, we just give 10-day notice, but we thought it was safer, less challengeable, the process would be less challengeable if we followed the land use public. So you can have public testimony and all the rest.
That's 30, it'd be 30 days from today.
Well, no, it's from the publication, so.
30 days from the date of publication.
Right. So,
Between 30 and 60 days from the date of
Yes.
publication.
so we have to, that's why we have a little buffer, because obviously we have to get it in the paper.
Right. So, who sets the timeline for publication?
We've suggested in your motion that we
Right.
do it. Actually, the clerk will be the one that would publish.
Okay. Well, yeah, so I'm just trying to understand, based on what we heard from Mr. Way, on whether or not there's an opportunity to approve this now, but still, see if they want to set a slightly different timeframe to accommodate any, either to move forward with this, but maybe not within that, not by February 23rd if they need another week or two, or if that's the timeframe that has to be followed. Said another way, because I probably wasn't very clear. If we approve this tonight, can Guardian Storage provide some input on whether or not they want to move forward on that day, or if they want to reconsider and have a 30-day publication date starting from February into March or something like that?
You have to set the hearing date tonight.
We have to set the hearing date tonight. Okay.
Well, you can set it for 30 or 60 days.
Okay.
Clearly, if the applicant wanted to change their plan,
Right.
they wanted to move to another parcel, they wanted to just cut their losses and walk away, they have the right to do that.
Right. So we could look at this as, if we approve this, we'd be setting just 30 days to either reconsider or let the applicant make another decision.
Well, the applicant always can make another decision.
Right.
It's up to the chair.
He works for
Yeah.
Guardian Storage. Yeah.
Unless there's any, unless the attorney has any heartburn about it, I'd be
Let's
happy to
just
hear.
keep it to procedure and not substance.
Okay. Procedure, not substance. Yes.
It's Kevin Cohen, 635 4 Mile Canyon Drive, Boulder, Colorado, 80302. I actually don't have any particular comments. I had a 6-hour plane delay and literally just rushed in the door from this very long, arduous day. And I obviously came in at the tail end of the discussion, so I had no idea what was said or what issues were raised. So I just wanted to provide an opportunity if there were any questions for us, as the applicant, I could certainly address them. But, I don't have anything to say. I thought this was just a motion to reconsider, at which point the revote, if that motion was approved, it would be 30 days from now that we would go through the same process we went through last month. It's certainly something we would like to do. We'd like to continue on the same parcel that was already considered previously because of the time, energy, and money that's obviously been put into that. So if there's any questions from me, concerns, want to know where we want to stand on anything, I just wanted to provide an opportunity for those questions to be asked.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about your plane ride. Trustee Rosenfeld, I think you were still.
Nope, that's it for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions and/or comments? Then I don't remember who has the motion in second, Phyllis. Do you know who that
I
is?
had written them down, I don't
I made
remember.
the motion.
Okay.
Phyllis made the motion.
I second it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all in favor? I can't see your hand. Is that opposed?
That's opposed coming.
Okay, so in favor is Rosenfeld, Skumatz, Muckle, D'Souza, Gregorus, and opposed is Cirilli and Williams. So that motion carries. Thank you.
That's all I have to answer.
Anything else to come before the board?
No, sir.
Anything else from the board? Seeing none, meeting adjourned.